Good morning, my name is Shannon. I'm the Acting Vice-Chancellor of the University of Canberra and I'm speaking with Michelle Grattan. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Francis.
Well, we've had an interesting week with the collapse of the census website and all of the fallout from that. What are the ramifications, and will people go back onto the website and actually fill in the census? I know I'm a bit reluctant just right now.
Well, I think many people won't. They'll think this has all been too much inconvenience and I'm not going to bother, or they'll focus on the arguments about privacy more than they would have if the whole thing had gone more smoothly. So this really is a nightmare for the government. Malcolm Turnbull is absolutely furious at the Bureau of Statistics and at the computing company IBM, and I think that the value of this census may be to some extent compromised. Now, it will depend on how many people do fill it in the end as to whether it's compromised in a major way, but certainly it's been a right royal stuff up at every level.
Well, before this even happened, there was an issue about privacy and people concerned about the data and maintaining names and addresses for an extended period. Where is that going to go in the future? Are people still worried about that?
Well, Nick Xenophon raised this and gave it a high profile, saying he wasn't going to give his name. He's going to try to bring in legislation that would make names voluntary rather than compulsory. There's also an argument about whether they are actually compulsory. The present statistician says they are. The previous statistician claimed that under the law they're actually not compulsory. So this argument will go on into the future.
Peter Dutton appears to be avoiding responsibility for refusing to discuss the effects of what are now being called the Nauru files, all of the complaints on the detention centre at Nauru. How important politically is this for Peter Dutton, and how will it play out?
The context of this is that a whole lot of files were dropped to the Guardian, Australia, and they've been published, so it's brought again into the forefront of attention the situation of these people in Nauru, and it's highlighted the fact that the government has simply not been successful in efforts to find them a third country resettlement place. Now, if they're refugees, they're not allowed to come to Australia, our obligation is to find somewhere else for them to go, and I think that really the onus is now on the government, indeed on Malcolm Turnbull, to give priority to this and to try to get those people off Nauru as soon as possible, and indeed, of course, off Manus Island, where there are also refugees and asylum seekers. If people are judged to be refugees, they should be found a place to go.
I've heard the commentary that this is a Nauru problem, not an Australian problem.
Well, it is an Australian problem. Australia put them there. We support the facilities in these places, and it really is a legal technicality to argue that it's up to Nauru. It's not up to Nauru, it's up to Australia. We need to get on and solve this quickly.
Moving to the economy then, Glenn Stevens talked this week about addressing budget repair in the long term. What is your opinion on the government's ability to deal with this from a policy context and the public debt issue?
This was the last big speech that Glenn Stevens was giving before he ends his term as Governor of the Reserve Bank, and he didn't mince his words. He was saying that we talk about the need to address budget repair in the broad, and then when specific proposals come up, we say, no, it's my interests, it's my benefit, whatever. It's very hard to get this dealt with because everybody has a vested interest. That was his message. I think that the Turnbull government will not be too keen to address budget repair in any robust manner. It's got a very narrow majority, one seat in the Parliament. Of course, the chance to address budget repair effectively was 2014, and in that budget, the Abbott government overdid things. It went too far. It was insensitive in the way it went at this problem, and of course that really soured the situation for quite a long time. They had to be pulled back in 2015, and now you've got a coalition government without a big majority, a big mandate. So budget repair is a really important issue. The credit agencies are watching us, and we'll be very lucky indeed to avoid a downgrading in Australia's credit rating.
Sounds like we will be talking about budget repair then for some time.
I think so.
Hasn't received much attention this week, but the Indigenous referendum has been pushed back, missing the chance to commemorate 50 years since the vote in 1967. Does the delay signify that there are divisions emerging, or is it a genuine attempt to incorporate more Indigenous participation?
Well, the council that's dealing with this, consulting in the community, especially in the Indigenous community, says it needs more time for consultations. But I think the real issue is that serious divisions have emerged in the Indigenous community, in the non-Indigenous community. The Liberal Party right is very against the referendum, and in the Indigenous community, many people have moved on to say, well, it's not just enough to have recognition in the Constitution, what we need is a treaty. So I think that this whole push to recognise the first Australians in the Constitution has been derailed, if we're being frank about it. I think that the chances of getting this referendum put in this term of Parliament, now the deadline of May next year has been missed, are pretty low.
That seems a pity, really, given the enthusiasm for it.
It's a great pity, but of course the worst thing would be to put a referendum that wasn't going to succeed, and I think any government would be pretty risk averse on that. But even between the coalition or the Prime Minister and Bill Shorten, although there's a commitment to bipartisanship, it's been clear for a while that they have different ideas on what should be put to the people. Bill Shorten's question would be much more ambitious. So I think we just have to accept the fact that this is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Towards the end of the week then, Scott Morrison blocked the sale of Ausgrid, the electricity network, or part of the electricity network in New South Wales, citing security reasons. To what extent is this a wider political agenda playing out here?
There's no doubt that people, the public, has become more concerned about the extent of Chinese investment in Australia, in utilities and in land. So there is a political context, and we saw a big vote at the election for parties, minor parties, that supported less foreign investment or more limits on foreign investment in terms of foreign ownership. But I think also there is a substantive issue here, and that when we're looking at the long term and the uncertainty over the intentions of China, if you look 25 years on, if you look 50 years on, then there are legitimate concerns. So I think this was a reasonable enough decision, and certainly other countries do not allow a high level of ownership, foreign ownership of key assets like the electricity grid.
Well, it has been another interesting week in politics, and
plenty happening.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks, Francis.